Welcome to the Vintage Hollywood Archive channel. Pretty, exuberant leading lady who began her Hollywood career in 1937 as a bit player and was a star by the mid-1940s. Talented and tempestuous, with a penchant for playing ripe melodrama with all the stops out, Susan Hayward reached her peak in the early 1950s. How Susan Hayward portrayed women's suffering as no other star before. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Vintage Hollywood Archive channel. Susan Hayward, the erratic fate of a woman. Susan Hayward's own special brand of sexiness and suffering. When we think of Susan Hayward, we think of great dramatic comedy actresses who are real-life drama queens. Similar to Ava Gardner, women who had a tendency to play parts that were close to home. Susan Hayward had a habit of playing women who were going through really tough experiences and were even scorned and somehow make it through those experiences until they're hit so hard at the end, which is what finally brings them down. Susan Hayward played alcoholics. Susan was an alcoholic. Susan played women who were depressed and consumed a lot of sleeping pills and other medication just to try to get through life. Susan consumed a lot of sleeping pills and antidepressants. What made Susan such a great actress is she played women who were a lot like her. Very beautiful, really adorable, quick-witted, very intelligent, and very honest. She was one of the best actresses ever, so could have easily hid her feelings if she wanted to, and played pretend and fooled a lot of people. What made her such a great actress was that she was so real, and you always knew what she was going through, how she felt, and how she felt about you. Although Susan Hayward began her movie career in the 1940s, her award-winning performances were in well-known post-war films like With a Song in My Heart, I'll Cry Tomorrow, and I Want to Live. Contrasted with the wholesome girl next door living in comfortable suburbia, she was a headstrong, embittered, and volatile redhead from a poor neighborhood in Brooklyn. She should have been an inspiration for lower-class readers identifying with her, but she did not represent middle-class femininity, nor did she maintain appearances. She was neither polished nor polite. Rather, she was a feisty star who tested the limits of acceptable feminine behavior in a conventional and conformist society that subscribed to domestic ideology. Since fan magazines publicized stars in response to constant polling of its readers, Hayward was not being typecast for popularity. As a result, Photoplay and Motion Picture published fewer stories about her. She won Photoplay's Gold Medal Award in 1953 for her role as singer Jane Froman in With a Song in My Heart, a sentimental success story that momentarily won her fans, but the magazine never displayed her picture on its cover. A few years later, Hayward received a third Academy Award nomination for portraying the blousy, self-destructive, alcoholic singer Lillian Russell in I'll Cry Tomorrow. But by then, she herself had starred in too many lurid headlines that could not be rewritten to publicize her off-screen life as a model of domestic bliss. For over 3 decades, she dazzled audiences with her portrayals of tragic, stormy women. Her own life was even more dramatic, overcoming poverty and a childhood accident that left her handicapped, winning the Oscar she deserved after 4 agonizing failures, finally finding love after the most heartbreaking divorce in Hollywood history. Because Susan Hayward never stopped fighting for happiness in her own life, she portrayed a woman's suffering as no other star before or since. Susan Hayward was born Edith Mariner in Brooklyn, New York, on June 30, 1917. Born in the Flatbush section, Susan Hayward grew up in the shadow of poverty. Her father, Walter Mariner, was a subway guard and Coney Island barker, and her mother was a Swedish stenographer named Ellen Pearson. Susan lived a very comfortable life as a child, but the precocious little redhead had no idea of the life that awaited her. At age 6, while crossing the street, she was struck by a car and suffered multiple injuries that left her with a slight but permanent limp, which later evolved into her trademark rolling gait. She attended public school in Brooklyn, where she graduated from a commercial high school that was intended to give students a marketable skill. She had planned on becoming a secretary, but her plans changed. After graduating in 1935, she worked in a handkerchief factory making cloth designs. When she had saved enough money, she quit her job and enrolled in the Fegan School of Dramatic Arts at Rockefeller Center. Because of her beautiful red hair, green eyes, and porcelain complexion, Hayward was a natural for the New Color magazine ads and soon landed a modeling job with the Walter Thornton Agency. She started doing some modeling work for photographers. She began her career as a model, going to Hollywood in 1937, aiming to secure the role of Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. Her lack of acting experience came through in her screen test, however, and she was not given the part. Selznick advised her to forget Hollywood and to go back home. Nonetheless, she acquired an agent as well as a new name, Susan Hayward, and in 1937, she embarked on a series of uncredited bit parts in movies. Susan was to carve her own signature in Hollywood circles. She was determined to stay in Hollywood and met Benny Medford through a freak biking accident. In 1937, she got a bit part in Hollywood Hotel. The bit parts continued all through 1938, with Susan playing, among other things, a co-ed, a telephone operator, and an aspiring actress. She wasn't happy with these bit parts, but she also realized she had to pay her dues. She was cast in Beau Guest opposite Gary Cooper. Her more substantial part in this film is frequently described as her feature film debut. During the war years, she acted with John Wayne twice, as a second lead in Reap the Wild Wind and as his leading lady in The Fighting Seabees. She also starred in the film version of The Hairy Ape. And later in 1955, she was cast by Howard Hughes to play Portrayed in the historical epic The Conqueror, again opposite John Wayne. She was best known for her work in films that were based on true stories. After the war, she established herself as one of Hollywood's most popular leading ladies in films such as Taproots, My Foolish Heart, David and Bathsheba, and With a Song in My Heart. In 1947, she received the first of 5 Academy Award nominations for her role as an alcoholic nightclub singer in Smash Up, The Story of a Woman. Hayward seemed to specialize in playing long-suffering women struggling to overcome adversity. She was nominated for Oscars for My Foolish Heart, With a Song in My Heart, and I'll Cry Tomorrow, before finally winning the Academy Award as Best Actress for I Want to Live. At the same time, she was stuck in what the tabloids called a turbulent marriage. Her 1954 divorce battle with first husband Jess Barker led to a 1955 suicide attempt while still filming I'll Cry Tomorrow. I Want to Live, a movie based on real events. Hayward portrayed Barbara Graham, a prostitute who was convicted, possibly wrongly, with 2 companions of having murdered a wealthy widow in 1953 and was executed in the gas chamber. For her moving performance, Hayward finally received an Oscar. She was involved in a scandal when Tahia Carioca threw her shoe at Susan. Egyptian belly dancer / movie star Tahia Carioca threw her shoe at Hollywood diva. the shoe accidentally hit American actor Danny Kaye. After Omar Sharif, Faten Hamama, and Youssef Chahine, who stepped out on the famous red carpet on the French Riviera in 1952, she was one of the first Arab stars whose movie was screened at the festival. What promoted one of the most famous Egyptian movie stars, who, interesting to know, was married 14 times, to throw a shoe at one of Hollywood's biggest stars? The story goes that during the gala dinner, Tahia Karaoke overheard Susan Hayward discussing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and referring to Arabs as savage animals. Feeling insulted, she threw her shoe at Susan Hayward, but hit Danny instead. When the actor tried to defend Susan Hayward, Tahia Karaoke then slapped him in the face. During the 1960s, Hayward was cast in a series of tearjerkers, and by 1964 had pretty much called it quits. For several years, her husband had suffered recurring bouts of hepatitis aggravated by alcohol. He died in 1966 at age 57. The loss was devastating to the actress, who disappeared from the Hollywood scene for a year, returning in 1967 to play an aging Broadway singer, Helen Lawson, in the movie version of Jacqueline Susann's Valley of the Dolls. Hayward's output decreased markedly following her triumph. Her later films include Thunder in the Sun, The Marriage Go Round, Where Love Has Gone, and Valley of the Dolls. Her last appearance was in the title role of the television movie Say Goodbye, Maggie Cole. Hayward's death from cancer was attributed by several writers to her having acted in the 1956 film The Conqueror, which was filmed close to the atomic testing range at Yucca Flat, Nevada. 91 members of that cast and crew later got cancer, including co-star John Wayne and director Dick Powell. The movie was shot from June through August 1954 among the scenic Red Bluffs and White Dunes near St. George, Utah, an area chosen by Powell for its similarity to the Central Asian steppe. At the time, it did not seem significant that St. George was only 137 miles from the atomic testing range at Yucca Flat, Nevada. The federal government, after all, was constantly reassuring local residents back then that the bomb tests posed no health hazard. Now, many years after above-ground nuclear tests were outlawed, St. George is plagued by an extraordinarily high rate of cancer, and the illustrious alumni of the Conqueror and their offspring are wondering whether their own grim medical histories are more than an uncommon run of bad luck. The physician's manner was tense. When she was asked how much she smoked, 2 packs a day. The habit was dangerous. A sophisticated dye test was done. There was no doubt. A tumor was growing on one of her lungs. A biopsy showed a malignancy, and the odds were that it would, the lung, have to be removed. When the initial shock subsided, she both wanted and didn't want to know details. She was a terrified woman who heard the somber talk of major surgery, the removal of part of her body, the prognosis for total recovery, and that single, numbing word, cancer. She packed her bags and fled Washington. Dizzying headaches began to bother Susan. She thought they were hangovers from her drinking, not to run off but to the deal with a life-threatening tumor. She was scheduled to star in her next TV movie pilot, Say Goodbye, Maggie Cole, at the end of 1972. She hoped the hangovers would end by then. In April 1973, while attending a party, Susan had her first seizure. Medically, it was much like an epileptic fit. The brain growths had caused a cerebral electric storm. To see it was blood-curdling. Her body jerked spastically. Her hands became grasping claws. Her face scrunched, lips twisted, cheek and jaw muscles pulled every which way. One of the most beautiful of filmdom's faces turned to a Halloween mask. When the seizure ended, she went into a deep sleep. She was taken to Century Hospital, where rigorous testing uncovered no less than 20 tumors growing at an incredible rate in the brain. By now, rumors that Susan was at the point of death were spreading all over Hollywood, and gossip columnists began to print them. The phone in her room would not stop ringing. It seemed that everyone in the world knew and wanted some last words from her. 6 weeks later, she was released, still alive, but looking like a ghost. Her 5'1" frame held a mere 85 pounds. The chemotherapy treatments caused all of her gorgeous red hair to fall out. Susan Hayward died at age 57 on March 14, 1975, of pneumonia-related complications of brain cancer, having survived considerably longer than doctors had predicted. Imagine how much more dramatic real life would be if we had a lot more of Susan Haywards in and out of Hollywood. Imagine what life would be like if you always knew where you stood with people. You would really know if someone liked or disliked you. You would really know if someone loved or hated you. If you were doing a good job or about to get fired. But at least you would know where you stood in life and how you stood with other people, and be able to make the necessary adjustments to continue to do what's working before something bad happened to you or you went off course. That is the life that Susan played in the characters that she played and the life she lived, which makes her very unique in Hollywood, where everything is generally about appearances and make-believe, and where Hollywood imitates real life too much, and people outside of Hollywood are more interested in appearances instead of reality. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new here.